says that Viola Desmond was a successful African movie theater which practiced segregation and unknowingly sat in the whites-only section on the main floor. She preferred the vantage point from her seat, and although offering to pay extra for the main floor ticket, she was forcibly arrested and jailed overnight. The next day she was fined for defrauding the provincial government of a 1-cent tax. Her story highlighted the need to address segregation in Canada and raised awareness of the African-Canadian situation locally, nationally, and internationally. In 2016, citizens chose to name this ferry in her memory. Please have a seat wherever you like.
Thank you. That concludes the official part of today's event. Thank you once again for coming. We have cake on the table over here. Please help yourself. And look for the new Viola Desmond to set sail as part of Halifax Transit's Harbour Ferry service starting Monday. Just to close things out, we do have a performance by Kenya Booker, who I've had the opportunity to hear sing before, and we're in for a treat. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Oh, my girl.
I'm not going to say they didn't send it, I'm going to say I didn't see it.
Halifax Transit. On behalf of Halifax Regional Municipality, I would like to thank you for taking the time today to help us unveil our newest harbour ferry. Before we go any further though, I'd like to say thank you very much to our drummers this morning. If everyone can give them a big round of applause. Great performance. Thank you. I'd like to begin by welcoming our distinguished guests and speakers representing the municipality, the African Nova Scotian community, and Viola Desmond's family. I'd also like to welcome representatives of AF Terrio, our shipbuilder. Today I will be joined on the podium by Mayor Mike Savage, Dr. Mayanne Francis, and Wanda Robson, Viola Desmond's sister. I'd also like to acknowledge the councillors that we have in attendance today. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge other honored guests and community partners and stakeholders in attendance today as we prepare to welcome the third ferry to our fleet in over 25 years. As you may know, the name of the new vessel was determined through a contest that saw over 200 names submitted by Halifax residents, which were then narrowed down to 5 that were voted on by members of the public. Over 19,000 votes were cast, with Viola Desmond receiving the most votes, and it might add by a landslide. Viola Desmond was born and raised in Halifax. She trained as a teacher, but then joined her husband in the operation of a combined barbershop and beauty parlor on Gottingen Street. She became famous in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia in 1946 when she unknowingly sat in a whites-only section of a movie theater that practiced segregation. She was not permitted to stay and was detained overnight, although she offered to pay the extra required to sit in this section. Her story highlighted the need to address segregation in Canada and raised awareness of the African-Canadian situation locally, nationally, and internationally. We are very pleased to honor Viola's memory by naming our newest ferry after her. The Harbour Ferry service itself has been in operation under various names and capacities for over 260 years, and today it carries approximately 1.4 million passengers each year on 2 routes that operate from Halifax to Woodside and Alderney. The replacement of our long-serving ferry fleet is an important part of our focus on improving service reliability as we look to increase capacity and ridership on both bus and ferry services in the years to come. And now I will hand it over to our first speaker, Mayor Mike Savage. Mr. Mayor.
everybody, and welcome to beautiful summer here in Halifax. It doesn't dampen the enthusiasm of this event. It's wonderful to be here with Wanda Robson, looking pretty good for 70 years old, I must say. Great to have you here. Dave and the team, the folks from AF Terrio, who have been tremendous partners for us as we build out our fleet. Councillor Hensby, perhaps other councillors, folks from our Office of Diversity and Inclusion at Halifax, which I think is one of the great accomplishments of Halifax in the last few years. Her Honour, former Lieutenant Governor, maybe future Lieutenant Governor, who knows, Diane Francis. Ladies and gentlemen, what a great pleasure to be here. I'm so pleased to see the latest addition to our fleet, which will assist in increasing service between Peninsular Halifax and the mainland, a route on which many of our residents depend. I do want to thank all of our honored guests, and we're going to hear from Ms. Robson later on, which we look forward to. Our guest speaker is former Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia, the Honourable Dr. Diane Francis. She was the first African Nova Scotia person to serve in that position and granted Viola Desmond a free pardon posthumously in February of 2015. I also see our acting CAO, Mr. John Traves, is with us today. Thank you. And I want to thank our Metro Transit staff who've been so committed to seeing this ferry completed and in the water, and to my colleagues on Regional Council for being here today to share this day of celebration. This is the third time that Halifax has conducted a ferry naming contest, and each time the number of participants grows. It has really contributed to a greater sense of pride and community. So thank you to everybody who submitted a name to honor the life and legacy of one of Nova Scotia's own. As Dave said, over 200 names were submitted in the fall of 2015. These names were reviewed and narrowed down by Halifax Transit and our corporate communications staff, then reduced to a short list of 5. And a committee was made up of council members to go through those. Viola Desmond received the most votes of the incredible 19,238 that were cast. And I hope that all elections this year in Halifax go so well. I was so proud to see so many people from communities throughout our region come together to recognize and celebrate the contributions of Viola Desmond and the wider African Nova Scotia community through this wonderful new addition to Halifax Harbour. Although it's been 70 years since Viola took a historic stand against racism and segregation by simply taking a seat in a new Glasgow movie theatre, her legacy lives on today. Her commitment to civil rights continues to educate and to inspire, highlighting, yes, how far we have come, but reminding us that as individuals and as a community, we must continue on this path. Last night at the World Nova Scotia International Tattoo, I took the salute along with the Premier of Nova Scotia, the Lieutenant Governor, Admiral John Newton, and of particular inspiration, Dr. Henry Bishop, who has a relative in the No. 2 Construction Battalion, the Black Battalion, who had to fight for the right to fight. Years from now, when families ride this ferry, parents will be able to tell their children about the powerful and the brave contributions of Viola Desmond to civil rights in Halifax, and indeed to the world. I also hope years from now that they'll be able to open their wallet and show her face on our currency. So let's make sure that happens. I think as we look back on the contributions of people like the No. 2 Construction Battalion, and particularly today, Viola Desmond, we should think about how do we honor their memory. It might be the best way to honor their memory is to look at people today who are fighting for justice, like those who are advocating for missing and murdered Indigenous women. Perhaps to look at young leaders who are fighting for a safe community, people like Quantrell and others, and wonder if we're supporting their cause today the way that we would have liked to support Viola Desmond years ago. It's easy to look back and say they could have done more. But 50 years from now, will people look back at us and say that we have done enough? Who are today's Viola Desmonds? To me, I think that's what Viola would want, is to change our attitudes and our behaviors. As we have a new Office of Diversity and Inclusion, I'm very proud of that. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to support today's Viola Desmonds. Let's take a moment and remember her every time that we board this ferry, but make sure that we do more to honor her great legacy. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you to Halifax Transit and to all of our partners. It is indeed a great day and a great person that we honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Savage. Next, I would like to introduce the Honourable Dr. May-Ann Francis, former Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia, to say a few words.
Good morning, everybody. Your Worship, family of Viola Desmond, councillors, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. On November the 8th, 1946, Viola Desmond, a successful businesswoman, left her Halifax home in her vehicle bound for Sydney, where she was looking to expand her business. Unfortunately, her car developed mechanical trouble. She stopped in New Glasgow to have her vehicle attended to. Viola never made it to Sydney. Subsequent events on that day changed the course of history in Nova Scotia and Canada forever. Viola was a hard-working entrepreneur with a dream and a vision for success. She was unique because she was a successful Black businesswoman during a time when race relations in this province were dismal. Viola was inspired by an American named Madam J. Walker. In the early 1900s, Madam Walker developed beauty products and beauty training schools for Black women. She was the first Black female millionaire in the United States. Viola first began her career as an educator. Black people were denied entry into the teacher training school in Toronto and instead had to obtain a teaching certificate by passing a provincial test. Viola studied through correspondence, wrote the provincial test, and obtained her certificate. She, along with other Black teachers, was permitted to teach only in Black schools. After reading an article about Madam Walker, Viola's dream developed. She saved her money to study at a beauty school in Montreal because those in Halifax were restrictive to whites only. Her determination, intelligence, and business acumen, matched by her drive to succeed in the face of racism and discrimination, is a testament to the type of person Viola was. She understood the value of hard work and empowerment. Her parents gave her a solid foundation and the support she needed to keep her dream alive. Although miles away, Madam Walker was her inspiration. Everything changed for Viola on that day in November 1946. Since her car would take several hours to be repaired, she decided to go to the movies. Because she sat in the whites-only section in the Roseland Theater, she was arrested and thrown into jail. It cost more to sit in the white section, but the clerk would not accept her money to pay the difference in price. Subsequently, she was convicted of tax evasion of 1 cent. 64 years later, on April the 15th, 2010, the province of Nova Scotia issued an apology to Viola's family for her wrongful conviction. On that same day, I, the first African Nova Scotian Lieutenant Governor, on the advice of Executive Council, granted the royal prerogative of mercy free pardon to Viola Desmond. It represented the unwavering recognition of her innocence and wrongful conviction all those years before, and right or wrong that never should have happened. I remarked at the time that it is impossible for the stroke of a pen and the granting of a free pardon to erase history and wipe the proverbial slate clean. On the contrary, as I said at the time, that very moment in Viola Desmond's story would ensure her legacy lives on in legal journals, newspapers, in human rights research, in political science debates, and in race relations studies. There is an undeniable link that will last forever between Viola Desmond, the Crown, Government House, and me personally, the first Black Lieutenant Governor who granted the free pardon to an innocent Black woman. The use of the royal prerogative of mercy, free pardon, for Viola Desmond was historic, and the significance of our connection cannot be denied or ignored. It is like the circle had been completed between the promise of her brave stand for equality and social justice and my appointment to the viceregal office. They are a confirmation for future generations of a new era of inclusiveness in Nova Scotia that ensures our history of exclusion, racism, and discrimination is never repeated. Unfortunately, we will never know to what heights Viola would have taken her business. Did that cruel act on November the 8th, 1946, and its aftermath break her spirit and crush her dreams? There is sufficient research to point to the negative impact of racism on one's mental and physical health. Viola was attempting to grow her business in 1946. Imagine for a moment the empire she could have built. Imagine how her successful business could have contributed to the economy and cultural fabric of this city, country, and province. Imagine the number of girls, especially Black girls, and yes, Black boys, she could have inspired. I know she inspired my dear friend and mentor, the late Beverly Maskell, who began her successful journey into the world of beauty business. Beverly died in 2001 at the age of 59, a multi-millionaire. Viola was her inspiration. Much has already been written about Viola. Her story will continue to unfold. We are here today to acknowledge her greatness and the effect she has had on race relations in Nova Scotia and Canada. Today, we name this ferry after a dynamic, brave, courageous, and successful entrepreneur who was the catalyst for tearing down written and unwritten policies of segregation, discrimination, and racism in Canada. This is another page in the story of Viola Desmond. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Francis. I would now like to invite our final speaker to the podium, Ms. Wanda Robson, one of Viola's sisters.
I'm short, so can you see me?
Yes.
As long as you can't see my feet. My sneakers on today. I forgot my stilettos at home. Oh, what a day. I can hardly believe it. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for those kind words. You know, Dr. Francis said everything that I wanted to say. I can't say it again, and I thank you. But I will have a little story about Viola. Maybe you'd like to hear it. Well, you know how sisters are. This was in 1946, and it was in early spring. Viola had just gotten her driver's license. And by the way, that's no mean feat for a woman in 46, and black also. There she was, proud as a peacock with her car. So I came home from work for lunch. By the way, I worked on this street. 23 years, a total of 23 years I walked the streets, and I worked at the Atlantic Fisheries Station as a lab technician. So this one day, this spring day, I was going back to work. Viola said to me, "Wani, how about I drive you to work, because I have to pick up some parcels at the post office." I said, okay. My brother had rolled his eyes. And I said, okay, it's okay. So I got in the car. She got in the car with 2 cushions under her. Now I'm short, she's short. We're short. She had 2 cushions under her. So she's chatting away, head up in the air, driving. We go down Caldwell Street, and we make the turn later along there, and we come to the top of the hill where I haven't been here for quite a while, where the clock is. Is that the top of the hill? Is that Duke Street?
Prince.
Duke Street. We come to Duke Street at the top of the hill. You don't want to know. We got to the top, and she kept talking to me, and we slid from the top of the hill right down to the bottom. We passed Barrington Street. We slid past a trolley was coming this way, and you know, I've come to the conclusion that people thought it was a driverless car. It's because they couldn't see her. saw me, and they figured, what is she doing? I don't drive. So there she goes, 2 cushions. She slides through Barrington Street. The trolley man, I saw his face. And then he's clanging the bell. And she's there talking away, head straight up in the air, and we finally reach, I'm sweating now. And not only am I sweating, but I'm praying. I mean, all my sins flashed. I said, dear Lord, if you let me get through this, I'll never do that again. Dear Lord, please, I'm not that old, I'm only 19. Please, Lord. And she's talking away. Then we get to Lower Water Street, get to, what's the street before Lower? It's Hollis Street. We get to Hollis Street. She's still talking. Their business and money. I'm so proud of them. And I said, she said, now do you want me to drive you right to work around the corner, or should I just go to the post office and pick up my parcels? That's a no-brainer. I said, Viola, thank you. I love you. But let me out here. I opened the door and I ran to her. She was such a wonderful person. She loved. I liked her so much because she loved children. She wanted to help children, but in the end, she wanted to impress upon them that they couldn't go anywhere if they didn't stay in school. You know? And I'm going to look at that again. Viola, I'm sorry, I have to. But and this her honor said, Viola had the pardon, the stamp. She had, and now this, I'm going to cry. I can't help it. It's just so wonderful, so wonderful. And I'm the baby of the family, and it's all, I'm the baby. And my sisters, I have a sister 103. Oh, she's wonderful. But I ramble on as I do, but the bottom line is that I'm so proud. And I know I keep saying that. And just imagine, I want you to imagine that Viola's grandfather was born a slave, to a slave in Richmond, Virginia. You know, it's just wonderful to think about all the things that has happened to her and to us as a black population. She has really made a mark. And people, I thank all of you for being here, for supporting, for telling your children, not telling them, teaching them by example. Example that we're all just people struggling to live. You read of the hatred. You read today the hatred going on, the bombings, and it tears my heart out to read it. I think of the children, the innocent children who don't even have just come into the world. But if we could all of us just start. It's not going to happen in my time, but I have great hopes for the future for our young people. That's where it's got to be, our young people. Give them jobs and work, but they must learn to be educated to get that. It isn't easy, it's expensive. One more thing I have to tell you about Viola is that I jump back and forth because I'm old. So bear with me. You'll understand as you get older. Things but I wanted to tell you one thing, and then I'm going to let you get home or wherever you're going. I want to look at the ferry. But Viola, in her will, what a wonderful, wonderful will she left. She left, you know, to mom, dad, family, father, brothers, sisters. But the residue, and she made quite a bit of money even at that time. The residue of her will was to be left to her nieces and nephews on one condition: that when they had to be in some sort of study. They had to be in university, or they had to be in trade school. They had to have some sort of being studying or going to university. They had to put that money toward their education. It wasn't for a car. It wasn't for a nice coat or a trip or whatever. It was for their education. So this shows them how much education means to young people. It should mean to young people, because as my mother always said, where are you going to go? What are you going to do without education of any kind, And Viola carried that on to that. So I have 4 sons, and 3 of them had their money started Dalhousie University, graduate, Dalhousie 3. With the money, I had no money. My mother, my son came to me, Mom, I have to have this money. I'm going to Dalhousie. I said, I don't know. I don't have any money. Viola, even after she'd been gone all those years, was still affecting my children, my sister's children. It's so wonderful. And my son's now successful. My daughter's successful. I can't go on, because you know why? I'm so happy and so thankful to have come this way. And I thank the shipbuilders and your worship. Thank you very much for everything. And your honor, always there. Every time I turn around, looking more beautiful than ever. Thank you all. Thank you for coming. I'm going to turn around now. Don't forget, we do have the portrait in the government house. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Robson. You know, I think we all know the most well-known story of Viola Desmond, but it's great to kind of hear the story behind the story of an almost serious collision in the middle of downtown Halifax. So it might be fitting that Viola's name is now on a ferry, so maybe people don't have to drive so much. So. Perfect. Thanks again, Ms. Robson, and our other speakers, and everyone in attendance today for joining us in celebrating the official unveiling of the new Harbor Ferry. I'll ask Mayor Savage to join me again. Yeah.
We'll do this together. We're going to unveil this, the Viola Desmond. Maybe the next one will be the Wanda Robson. You come on over here. We're pulling it up? Okay. Down this way? Okay, here we go.